So yeah, my name is Bryan Zunigha, and I'm Delaware. Lenape, our homelands, our ancestral homelands are New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, but we've gone through 7 forced removals, and so now our specific tribe, my tribe, is Delaware Tribe of Indians, which is our government name, but like our tribal name, we're Lenape is kind of like, but we use those two terms in like very interchangeably. One thing that I've heard is a lot of people, I've heard a lot of conversation about language reclamation. Anybody trying to learn one of your native language? Anyone like actively trying to like engage? And so that's something in our people, we call our language sleeping. Because our last really fluent speakers died in the 90s. But luckily, the blessing of God, people have recorded elders, and so we have a lot of, I could listen to elders speaking right now. So I thought it'd be cool to start out everyone by just teaching you, Lenape can be really long, the language, the words, string together. So I thought it'd be cool to just start everyone by teaching you a Lenape word. Can we do that? Yeah. Okay, so you got to listen carefully. You ready? Repeat after me. Hey. Hey. That's how you say hi. Okay. It is. We think, and this is feels pretty native. We claim that this is why people say hey these days. We don't see any records of that before the Dutch interacted with us in the 1600s. So, hey, good to see everyone. I do. My dissertation entitled "I Want to Tell a Story," Gata and Chimwe, and I want to tell a story. I love telling stories, so I thought let's start there. My daughter and I, we love to go to powwows. We dance. One of our traditions in our culture, we're an Oklahoma tribe now because we were moved into Oklahoma, and so I dance Southern Straight style. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Southern Straight. And then my daughter dances cloth, but Southern cloth, not the fancy Northern cloth, if anybody's familiar with that. I remember, though, one of the first times I was at our tribe's powwow, not first time, but I was at our tribe's powwow, and intertribal dance just finished. So intertribal is when everybody comes out and you're just going around. So the song ends, and so I'm going to sit down in my seat, going to the Pendleton blanket that my family reserved our bench with for the whole weekend, and I have an otter drag, and I don't like to sit on that because there's conchos, there's silver conchos, so I don't want to sit down. So I always bring up my otter drag. As I was bringing up my otter drag, something caught my eye. So I have bandolier beads, so long strings of beads that I wear. As I was bringing up my otter drag, I noticed the beads were actively falling. It wasn't, hey, where did they go? It was, they are actively leaving right now. So I'm seeing the beads falling off, and so I'm scattering and I'm pulling and I'm going to the seat, and I take off the bandolier beads. I set them down. Skip, which is a cousin-ish, not really. But he's sitting there, I hand him the beads, he starts assessing the damage. And then I learn a new dance that day. So in Southern Straight dance, a normal dance, I know how to do the Southern Straight dance. There's also an offbeat dance called trot, the trot. So I know the trot. There's a really cool dance called the shuffle. Or the ruffle. And so I learned that day, though, the reverse dance of shame is what I learned. So I walk full regalia, picking up beads off the ground because they're just all over the arena. And here's what I want to say. I think my people, the Lenape, the Delaware Tribe of Indians, we are a mosaic, a beautiful mosaic of people that God's put together. He's strung together. And we're family relationships, we're culture, tradition, shared history. But we have a torn thread in our people. The thread that pulls us all together, the thread of culture that pulls us together is stretched and frayed and torn because of 7 forced removals, because of boarding schools, because of forced acculturation. So just as I chose simulated, so when I sat down, here's what happened. I sit down, Skip's looking at it. Skip knows what he's doing. He's danced Northern traditional his whole life. He's like really good at this stuff. He looks at my beads and he says, "Why did you use simulated sinew?" Like, if you don't know, simulated sinew is like nylon, basically, with wax on it. Real sinew holds together. And all he said was, "Next time use real sinew." Right? That was his, like, how he summed this up. And I want to say that I think many of my ancestors, and I'm grateful for them, but when they chose to follow Jesus, which I'm grateful for, but many of them chose to use I would say they replaced everything with a thread that just wasn't strong enough. And I would say it was a colonized Christianity. It was a Western Christianity. And instead of inviting Christ into their ceremonies and practice, they replaced almost everything with the borrowed strains of Western Christianity. And this is, if you look at our tribe, it's led to division. It's led to destruction of much of our culture. Here's one example in my life. A few years after my Lenape grandfather died, my grandmother's health was declining, and I knew it was close to time. And so I went in and saw her, and she said, "Go grab the red binder off the shelf outside on the bookshelf." So I go and grab the red binder, and I hand it to her. And she says, "I'm proud of you. I'm proud of your ministry training." Like, I'd finished an MDiv. She said, I'm proud of your ministry. And I think you should have this. This is your great-grandfather's sermon notes. I didn't even know this existed. My great-grandfather spent the last few decades of his life preaching at native churches. And so I opened up this red binder, and I see all these churches. He had a sermon, and then he wrote where he preached the sermon at. So at the bottom, I read Copan Baptist Church. And the year he preached sermons, several sermons there. Seminole Baptist Church, 1950. Pawhuska Indian Church, 1949. Osage Baptist Church. Kiowa Baptist Church, 1953. And I see these sermons that my native great-grandfather preached. And what a beautiful thing, a legacy that I get to be a part of. And then I did this thing called Google. If you're familiar with that. So I took some of the sermon notes, and I was like, this sounds really cool. So I began to research and look, oh, this is a cool little phrase. Like, I wonder if anyone else has said this. And I realized all the sermons were like Charles Spurgeon sermons. There was some sermons that he pulled out of like preaching notebooks and preaching little like anthologies. And what I realized was my native great-grandfather was teaching assimilated like sermons, white Western sermons to native churches. And that's really a picture of what our tribe looks like today. We have a lot of assimilation. We have a lot of really white Western thought when it comes to Christianity. What I thought was an expression of indigenous Christian leadership was just assimilation in a red binder in a lot of ways. So I have 2 things that I still love that. I love that he gave the last part of his life just trying to preach Christ to different places. So I have 2 things in my life that I'm really grateful for. One is my Master's of Divinity. And when I think about my formal training, I am really grateful. It gave me confidence as a minister. It gave me some foundation. But I'm also grateful for my moccasins. My moccasins give me credibility among my people. And when I look at my life right now, as I'm trying to interact with my people, with my Delaware people, I'm realizing that my moccasins have done more to further my leadership than my masters ever could. The realization, that kind of pushed me to think about leadership and to think about, so when I was researching for my dissertation, I just finished a doctoral dissertation, I interviewed 13 leaders within my tribe, and I just asked them, what is leadership among our people? So I teach all day on that. I don't have time for that. I have like 15 more minutes. So what those voices challenged me to do was reconsider not only like what leadership should mean to me, but what leadership as a Christian should look like. Part of the reason I believe that is because if I want to lead like Jesus, Son of God, came in the flesh. What do we call his ministry? We call it incarnational, right? If Jesus' ministry was incarnational, then my ministry among my people must be incarnational. It has to be, it has to look like Christ, but with Lenape skin, right? With Lenape flesh. So here's what I learned from my leaders. And here's what I'm trying to think about what this means for me to be a good ancestor. The leaders I interviewed constantly described a good ancestor as someone grounded in communal responsibility. So these, if you're taking notes, these are the three things. Grounded in communal responsibility, sustained by generational accountability, and formed through invitation rather than aspiration. So we're grounded in communal responsibility, sustained by generational accountability, and we're formed through invitation, not aspiration. So let me walk through this. So first, my leaders described good leadership as a communal responsibility. So this thread of culture that pulls us together as people, it is frayed, it's worn, it's tattered. And so if we want to remain together as Lenape people, then that thread has to be rebuilt and restored and strengthened. And so among the Lenape, good leaders do this. They do this by placing the community needs above their own preferences and priorities. Good ancestors leave behind stronger communities than the ones that they inherited. Leadership in our community, we do have two strains. We have a Christian strain and we have a traditionalist strain in our among our people. And strong, like in Oklahoma, it's MAGA country. I don't know how else to say that. There's a lot of very hard conservative, evangelical, and that's in our tribe, and we see it. And then there's traditionalists who despise, right, in some ways, the beliefs. And yet, we come together every year. I just saw everyone 2 weeks ago at our powwow. And there is a love and a concern and a care for one another, regardless of where you're at. Within these two threads, though, I think there's been carried a thread of Christianity that really has hurt. It's ruined a lot of culture. There's stories of Christians throwing rocks at traditionalists as they were practicing ceremony. There's stories of Christians yelling and tearing down, and so this is what we experience. There's a couple missionaries that interacted with our tribe in the 1700s. So David Zeisberger, I doubt if anybody knows that name. He was a Moravian missionary that followed us around Ohio when we were moving from Pennsylvania to Oklahoma. Maybe you've heard of David Brainerd. Has anyone heard of David Brainerd? So David Brainerd worked among the Lenape as well. So these two people brought the gospel in a lot of ways. They brought Christianity, they brought faith, but they also did it in a paternalistic kind of way. They said, as you came to faith, let's civilize you, right? Which what that means is the way you garden is crazy. There's squash and there's corn and there's beans around the corn, and that's weird, right? We need to be in rows. And that was part of Christian teaching and development, right? They told us you have to change your ways. And so these guys really changed some of our culture. As I was interviewing some leaders for my dissertation, one guy, he's a traditionalist. He said, if I could go back in time, I was sitting down just looking at him, and casually he said, if I could go back in time, I would kill David Brainerd. I would murder David Brainerd and David Zeisberger. And if you would have told me that 15 years ago when I was in seminary, 20 years ago when I was in seminary, I would have been shocked. I would have said, wow, the division is crazy. But I realized what he was saying. He was a protector in that moment. A cultural protector. He wanted to defend his people against cultural ethnocide, right? So he said, I would kill David Brainerd. This is what a community leader does, cares for the community, protects the community. We have a lot of examples of protecting the community. Our community is built on listening to diverse voices rather than mandated uniformity. And so it's not just mandated uniformity. One leader was sharing things they appreciated about a certain leader within our community, and he stressed he didn't shut people down. He let everyone have a moment to talk, to have their own opinions, whether it's good or bad. Another shared their leadership practice. He says, I listen and I never dismiss negative comments. This means much more. It's like singing in harmony instead of singing in unison. Does that make sense? We want to be leaders who see our communal responsibility and then raise up the different voices within our people. So that's the first thing. Second, my leaders described good leadership as generational accountability. Generational accountability. I love eating with my people. I love eating with my people. When we go and we celebrate together, here's what it looks like for our Delaware people. I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but when I'm with some families, like white Western, it seems like, hey, let's get the kids through the line first, right? You ever experienced that? Like, hey, they're a terror, and so let's just get them settled first. When you're with a Delaware family, it's the eldest to the youngest, right? And so when we line up to eat, who's oldest and who's youngest? And sometimes you're like, you should be up a little further, right? But I love that because it's a picture of our generations. Like, this is a picture. I stand behind people and in front of people. I'm going to choke up because I think about the years of history within our people. We've gone through 7 forced removals within our people. Let me just share this. Let me share our 7 forced removals. So I've kind of distilled it to 5 farewells. So we have 5 farewells. So first, we have a farewell to our ancestral homelands in New York and Pennsylvania. If you've ever heard of William Penn, The Walking Purchase, that was us. So that was our first farewell. Then we said farewell to lands in Ohio, in Indiana, in Missouri, and finally we had a reservation in Kansas in the States. And that was the last move from Kansas to Oklahoma. So those 5 farewells to lands in our ancestral homelands, Ohio, Indiana, Missouri, and Kansas. And then we said 5 farewells to other parts of our community. We have 3 groups that live in Canada now, 3 nations, Lenape nations in Canada, and then 3 groups in the US. So our personal people have had to divide from 5 different groups, and now we live in Oklahoma. When I think about the people that have kind of walked this road, one leader put it this way. He says, when you're raised being told who you are and your relatives are and your ancestors are, I think that there's not just a pride there, but there's a responsibility to the things that they've done. They've struggled to remain Lenape, to remain Delaware. There's so many choices they could have made. They could have sent us down different paths. And yet every time they come to those junctures and those crucial decisions, they chose to remain as a community, to identify themselves as Delaware or Lenape. And many of times that was the harder choice. When I think about our thread that's been torn and tattered, it is torn and tattered, our cultural thread. We've lost a lot of our songs. Our language is sleeping. And yet, we still have pucker toe moccasins that we make, that we dance with, and we danced with them 2 weekends ago. We use designs for our beadwork from trees that we've never seen. They're from homelands that we've never known. A tulip popper, we don't have tulip poppers in Oklahoma, but the leaf of a tulip popper is one of our most commonly used designs. We only see it on a regalia. When I think of our tulip purses, they're fashioned nowhere else on earth, our Lenape ancestors have done so much to continue our culture. And so we are obligated, we are responsible to continue that if we want to be a good ancestor. So we have the people in front of us, and then there's people coming behind us. I think leadership decisions in our people should be evaluated by what they leave behind for the next generation. We don't lead just for culture, we don't preserve culture for nostalgia's sake. We do it because if the culture dies, so do our people. My chief told me, he said, if we lose our culture, the Delaware tribe of Indians just becomes the Delaware tribe of business. We have to keep our culture. That's what we have. So there's a responsibility. I think there's a biblical responsibility, though. Revelation 7:9, John writes about this picture about people from every tribe, nation, and language. And they're surrounding the throne and they're worshiping the Lamb. And how do we know that they're from every tribe and people and language? He uses his eyes. He sees differences. Maybe regalia. I don't know what this is, but there's something different. This diversity, this uniqueness that he created among the Lenape people, that's not just for funsies. This is God, the Creator, like saying, you are special. And so we have an obligation to the next generation. So leaders are obligated to continue this. The future of the community depends on leaders who intentionally place responsibility into youngers' hands. And so the third thing, and I'm almost done, here's the way this leader is catalyzed. When I studied leadership among my people, this is one of the things that helped me understand myself more than anything. I learned that we move into leadership through invitation, not aspiration. And I don't know if I think there's other Native communities that are like this, but this explained my dad and my grandpa. I always wondered why they had degrees and they never moved into greater leadership roles. And I think it's because they didn't push into that. They didn't aspire. They just said, I'm here to meet whatever needs are present, which is a very Lenape way of acting. Leadership in our people happens through leadership, through invitation. And I was thinking about this finding in my research, and I kept thinking, what does that mean for me? And I thought about it the wrong way. I've been thinking about, when is somebody going to invite me into leadership, right? If that's invitation only, right? That's it. And then it flipped. Like, this is just recently, I realized, no, this is about me inviting the next generation to follow. I may not have the greatest leadership capacity and capability in my tribe. I might not have the biggest voice, but I have a responsibility to reach out to those behind me and bring them in. So how this looks like for me, I'm intentional with others in my generation, younger. My daughter, I bring her in to the community. I've made regalia. I've learned to do ribbon work and bead work because I want to bring her in and I want to lift her up. And I hope that she has a stronger, louder voice than I'll ever have. Because that's my responsibility, is to teach her her ways and her culture. But I've got to know it first. She was, just to give you an example, she was sitting at our powwow, and her auntie was on the powwow committee. She looked over and she said, Auntie, how do you apply? That's what she said. How do you apply for powwow princess? And her auntie said, you don't. They ask you. She was thinking from a white Western perspective. How do you apply? How do you aspire? And her auntie said, they just invite you. A couple months later, though, she asked me a question. She said, Dad, she's a junior. She's about to be a junior. She's thinking about college. She said, what major would benefit our tribe the most? She's on track. She may not be powwow princess, but as she's asking the questions, how can she be a benefit to her community, she's leveraging what she has and being willing to step in. All right, I'll just stop it here. Let me conclude. I got so much. This goes fast, doesn't it? All right, I love Jesus. I love my people. But I don't love the Jesus reflected in capitalism and politics and Western culture. I don't think Jesus is a white savior created by Europeans. I don't think you guys do either. If you do, you might be in the wrong place. I believe the Creator, Kisheli Mokonk, entered creation as a tribal member within a nation facing colonization from the Romans who threatened cultural assimilation. His first miracle was at a Jewish cultural event. On the cross, he cried out in his tribal tongue, right? In Aramaic. And he did not come to assimilate people into a monolithic kingdom, but in the book of Revelation, we see a picture of diversity that includes every tribe and every language remaining for all of eternity. And Jesus says, if you know me, you know Creator. When I think about my people, they've carved their own Manitouk, they've carved their own spirits, they've worshipped other things, but Creator is knowable, and that's what I want them to know. I want them to know Creator is knowable. And then I think of the 400 years that we've interacted with Europeans. For over 400 years, just like Saul's daughter Michal, people bearing the name Christian have watched us dance and despised us in their hearts. Just like the men from Judea in Acts 15, our people have been told they must follow cultural customs for salvation. Our way of life, our leadership structures, our rights and celebrations have been needlessly attacked by those claiming that their practices represent Christ, when in fact they were simply proselytizing for the sake of white Western culture. And yet I have that in my ancestry too, right? I have the name of Christ. And so the way I look at this is I'm Lenape and I'm Christian. And if Christian have hurt the Lenape, then I have a responsibility to step in as a Christian and help heal. I can't blame the people who came in 400 years. I can't blame the Dutch. I can't blame the British. I have to step in and say, people who've carried the name Christ have hurt our culture. I want to learn it and I want to teach it. That's my responsibility as a Christian. Because if we broke something, let me help fix it, right? The thread that holds my Lenape people together is frayed and worn. As a Lenape follower of Christ, I see two paths before me. The first path, continue to destroy the thread through cultural assimilation. Hope the scattered beads find their way back to the Creator. Other path, the path that I think of the good ancestor, is to strengthen the cultural thread of my people, so our knowledge of the Creator can be shared in a way that builds and does not harm. Historically speaking, among my people, this is more of a narrow path. But I hear good things about narrow paths. Can I pray? Father, I pray for the Lenape. I pray for my people. I pray that you would bring in people that represent you in a good way, that want to learn culture, that want to learn our songs, that want to learn our language. And I pray that the name of Christ that has been ruined by many would be redeemed, and those who follow Jesus would be honored and would represent you well. I pray that in Jesus' name. Amen. Wanishi.
So we have 10 minutes. I'm not going to get up, so I can just stay. We have 10 minutes, though, so if you have any questions, please throw up your hand or just start talking. Bryan will listen and respond.
I do like questions.
So what is your next step with taking your dissertation back to your people?
Yeah. So I wrote my dissertation to my people. I didn't write it to the academic community. There's a whole side note, like, hey, if you're reading this and you're not Lenape, thanks, but this isn't for you. I don't know. I don't know who's gonna read it. It's stupid long, and I think for me, the biggest thing I want to do is every opportunity I get, I want to dance with my people, and I want to learn our language, and I want to sit down with the guy who said I want to kill David Brainerd. I wish I could have killed David Brainerd. We're friends, and I want to ask about his Three Sisters garden, and I want to I just want to represent Christ well. So that's my next step. The dissertation, who cares? And if I hope some read it, I think some will. It's very. I wrote it to be accessible to our community. Yeah. That's a good question.
Can I ask a little more about? I don't know as much, obviously, history of tribes in the U.S. as in Canada.
Yeah, same here. The other side.
Vice versa.
Yeah.
But I know about some
amount of forced removals on your people.
Yeah.
It's not that wild.
Yeah. Yeah. We were right at the edge, right? So every time Europeans would come in, they would move us just a little bit and say, okay, you're good. Yeah. And then they just kept going.
Are there threads in Lenape culture that kind of were weaved from those different places?
So we picked up, we have, we're scavengers, like cultural scavengers. We don't know what is ours and what's not ours. And then everyone fights over it. And so they say sky woman muskrat, and we're like, we have that too. So we don't know, we're in Algonquin, rooted language. So we don't know, we think that's ours. They called us the grandfathers. So we're called the grandfather tribe, partly because we would bring peace among warring tribes in the Northeast. But part of it is we think that we're the oldest. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I think we are. And I think that story is ours, that creation story, turtles, ours. But we don't know, because we've been moved so many times. Our ribbon work looks, we created it. The Osage got really rich because of oil. Our grandmas, we got paid to make it. We think a lot of those patterns were ours originally, and then they said, oh, these are ours now. We just don't know, though. So, yeah, we picked up a lot along the way. There's stuff we have a lot written about us too, because we've been interacting since the 1600s. And so Indian football, if you've ever heard of Indian football, men only use their feet, women can do whatever the crap they want. We still play that, but that's written about in the 1600s, early 1600s by a European. So there are some things that we think we have, longevity-wise, and there's some things that we know that we've kind of created. We know stomp dance is a thing, but we don't exactly know what songs were ours 400 years ago and what we learned from Choctaw or what yeah. Any other questions? That's a good question.
Still got time.
Do you have some traditional dishes that you've passed down for your special dinners? Or are they pickled as well?
Yeah, everything's kind of mixed together, like grape dumplings and fry bread, but that's really Dene, right? But we love it because it's really good, and we make it. There's people that maybe try, blue corn. Sasapsing is, we call it blue corn. Grind it, make it a mash, but a lot of people do that. So a lot of squash. If it's a traditional, my daughter had a naming ceremony last month, and so I was in charge of the food because that's my responsibility, and I killed it. We made a Three Sisters succotash. To be honest, I'll be honest, we use spices now, which that probably is new. Back in the day, it would have just been bear grease probably, some stuff like that to flavor it, which probably would be good too. But yeah, stuff is, I don't know that there's anything super traditional that we carried from just the East Coast. Part of it, think about this too, all of our food sources are different.
Yeah.
We would eat eel. I've never seen an eel in Oklahoma, except the aquarium or something. So, yeah. I don't know, maybe eel's good. Anybody eat eel? Yeah. It's a good question. Other questions?
I have another one.
Yeah.
Who wants to ask anything? Can you tell us a little bit about what language reclamation is going on if the language is asleep?
Yeah.
If it's too long, it's hard to get it back up.
Yeah. We have people that are fighting, I would say fighting, and I'm really grateful for them. It's hard because you're disconnected. So we have there's one dear soul, Jim Rementer, who came down from Pennsylvania, just a white dude. He went to Camp Lenape, is what they say in Pennsylvania. And he's like, oh, this actually is a thing. Lenape is actually a tribe. So he goes to Oklahoma. This is in the 60s, 70s. And then he just stays. He's adopted by one of our cultural icons. Nora, Dean Thompson, and he's pretty fluent, and or as close as we could get. He's still alive. He's recorded our ancestors, and so we have tons. Like if you go to Lenape Talking Dictionary, you can learn a bunch of language if you want, and just hear the elders speak. And so there's people who are fighting for that. I've got a Lenape copy of the Bible I try to read, but it's slow, and because there's no immersion, that makes it really hard. But we do have some people that, especially who are more centrally located to Bartlesville, where the headquarters is, they'll get together. I've been on, there's every now and then they'll start a Zoom time to talk. So yeah, it's slow and hard.
What's the population, Bryan, of the Lenape around Bartlesville?
Yeah, I don't know what's local and what's global, but it's around 12,000 total. And I would say probably half, maybe a third to a half are local, and then a lot of people live outside of that. Because we were hit with allotment. I don't, if you want to look up the Curtis Act and allotment. And so we didn't get a reservation. We were settled on your land, Cherokee, and then just given allotments within that. And so that kind of scattered us. Yeah. Cool. All right.
Any last burning question in the room?
I have a question. I'm interested in your experience. You're working at a California Baptist
Sure.
University, which
Yeah.
has Southern Baptist ties, but not controlled.
Strong. Yeah.
Yeah, and you went to Midwestern.
Yeah. You did your research. Yeah.
Well, you said things, but
Yeah.
I know about that part
Yeah.
of the world.
Yeah.
And so, how receptive have Southern Baptists, and I saw you in the IMB.
Yeah.
How receptive
very
have they been to your interest in indigenous expressions of?
How receptive? I don't know. Probably not that receptive. I don't know. I think it's probably created a ceiling for me, honestly, in certain circles. I don't think it's that accepted, to be quite honest. A lot of people just don't know what to do with it. So I don't bring it up, in all honesty. But they look at my hair and they're like, that guy's weird. But I wear it so that I can talk to my friends, and it breaks down a small wall. And so I just have a value of I care more about my people than the Southern Baptist Convention. Even though, honestly, theologically, that's a lot of the lanes where I am still. But yeah, I would say not that receptive, but if I don't bring it up, they don't get mad, which I don't know what that means. Yeah. There you go. All right, our word for thank you is wanishi. So wanishi. Yeah. Yeah.